Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and I've brought back Dean Tuck. Why have I brought back Dean Tuck? He's the Managing Director of Dreadnought Resources. And if you saw the interview I did with Dean last month, I got a little bit overexcited about their project in the Kimberleys. Why? Well, this is an area that is really prospective, but it's been locked up by the Defence Force for quite some time. It's had no modern drilling on it. And when we last spoke, Dean was saying that this could be another Mount Isa / Cloncurry lookalike. So I want to do the deep dive. I want to do the deep dive on this Kimberley project and find out why Dean's pretty excited about what's going on. So Dean, welcome back to Making Money Matter. Great to see you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kerry. Always a pleasure to be here.
So I mentioned before, like Dreadnought's got a number of projects underway, but I did get pretty excited about what you've got up in this West Kimberley region of WA. Now,
absolutely. It is one of our listing assets. So it's one of the original projects for Dreadnought.
So as I said, let's go into the deep dive. So it was on the original listing. How did you get your hands on it? Because as I said a moment ago, this was locked up by the Defence Force for a long time. So how do you unlock it?
It's a project with fantastic history. And how did we unlock it? That goes all to our founding directors. So Paul Chapman, Dave Chapman, this has been a pet project of theirs for quite some years. I think that goes back to 2013, 2014. And in addition to that, you also have Tim Clifton, Drew Money. These are some of the guys that were first movers into that area. And we brought everything together. And that really became one of the early listing assets of Dreadnought. Because, like you said, 1978, this ground gets picked up by the Commonwealth to be used as a defense reserve. So under control by the Commonwealth, freehold land, and no mineral exploration was allowed to happen on this area. 2000s, late 2000s, you had Paladin Energy wanted to get access to the Ubaguma uranium project, which Ubaguma is one of the stations that the Commonwealth purchased for defense. And they got all the way up to the High Court. And it pretty much came down to state acts don't apply to Commonwealth land. However, there was not a Commonwealth Mining Act. And since the mineral still belonged to the state, the State Mining Act had to be rewritten in conjunction with the Commonwealth in order to allow the State Mining Act to apply to Commonwealth land so that the minerals on that ground could still be enjoyed by the people of Western Australia. So, 2013, that Mining Act was rewritten. They explicitly covered Commonwealth lands within the state of Western Australia, and that opened up the next phase, which was how do you get access, and that's where all of that pre-work that was done by Paul Chapman, Dave Chapman, and the others was about how do we get the deeds of access under the Commonwealth Acts, how do we get access to that ground, get boots on ground, get the agreements in place, build the relationships with defense. And late 2018, 2019, that's when we signed the deeds of access. Paul Chapman, Dave Chapman, and the original directors of Dreadnought, where at that stage it was Iron Ringer, it was a private company. And I was brought in to do all the dirty work, build that relationship with defense, get the approvals, and get boots on ground for the first time since Roy Woodall was there in 1958, 20 years before it went off limits. So it's an extremely exciting opportunity. I've gone to places like Myanmar or Burma, if you will, the Amazon, Ethiopia, looking for opportunities like this where mineralization is sticking out of the ground, untouched by modern exploration techniques. And here it was in Western Australia, a tier 1 mining jurisdiction. What a dream come true. What a dream opportunity. And that's what really got Dreadnought on the board and been one of our main projects from day one.
I'm getting excited again. And one of the things you said a minute ago is Roy Woodall. Now, Roy Woodall, I actually remember giving Roy Woodall a Legend of Mining Award years and years ago. What an absolute legend. He really knew how to find these sorts of things. But I want to understand, is defence still involved at all? Or is this no longer defence land?
No, it's still defence land. We actually have a fantastic relationship with defence. So some things that they want. So when they acquired this Yampi Sound training area, which is the second largest defense training area in Australia, behind Woomera. So Woomera in South Australia is one of the largest. It's also the most sensitive. They do all the really top secret work out there, and yet there's still 5 world-class mines operating within the Woomera Defence Reserve. So YSTA, it's the second largest defense reserve, and it's completely not sensitive at all. So they acquired the YSTA. They planned to do some activities on it, live firing, bombardment, and things like that. And they realized it was actually a really difficult place to get access to most of the year. And so they then went, after buying the YSTA, they went and purchased two other stations in Northern Territory and Northern Queensland. And that's where a lot of the bulk of the activity is for their activities that they originally bought the YSTA for.
What's
So
YSTA?
for the past 40,
Sorry, what's YSTA?
Oh, sorry. The Yampi Sound Training Area.
Oh, okay.
So that's what so defense refers to it as. So it's the Yampi Sound Training Area. And so for the last 45, 50 years, this ground has pretty much only been used for SAS survival training. And so you have very minimal infrastructure, very little sensitivities. And so defense is really keen for us to find a mine so that we can actually put in an all-season road. And if we, as a mine, can help build that capital structure, all of a sudden that road that goes across two mudflats and holds up access for months out of the year, if a mine gets put in, all-season access gets put in, and they can utilize that facility 50% more. And where the mine would be, it's a very small area cut out from what is ultimately the entire size of the YSTA.
That's really interesting. So that tells me, again, it comes back to mining, defense, and farming. We all work together for an outcome that works for everybody. So that's great. So I wanted our audience to understand that. So again, going back to what you think you've got, I said at the beginning that this could be a Mount Isa / Cloncurry lookalike. Why do you say that?
It's a bold call, absolutely.
It's a very bold call.
When we first went up there, it's one of these things where if you dream big, you might make it happen. So when we first looked at this area, so you have mineralization sticking out of the ground, which is what I alluded to before. So straight off the bat, you have this similarity to Mount Isa, in that you have these veins of copper that sticking out of the ground that you can go walk on top of, and they're sticking out above a black plain soil. So you have this black plain soil, which is very difficult to explore through, and you have these veins sticking out of the ground full of copper. And those veins in the Cloncurry district, these veins are everywhere. Sometimes they turn into a mine, sometimes they don't. But they're part of a system that has things like Osborne, Eloise, name them. You have some fantastic deposits in that region. And if you had those deposits, then they wouldn't be sticking out of the ground as giant veins. They'd be under the black plain soil. And so first up, we had this, exploration environment that looked very similar to the Cloncurry region of Mount Isa. And so that was the pipe dream. Now, the mineralization sticking out of the ground, this is where Roy Woodall put drill holes in 1958. There's a place called Grant's Find. So Grant was an early project generator. We're talking like 1905, 1906.
Wow.
And he was out of Adelaide and commissioned by was it Wagon Wheel or Narla lead zinc operation, a dodgy junior company out of Adelaide back in 1905, 1906, to go up and do exploration on some of these high grade lead zinc showings, which 50 years later would become the Leonard Shelf MVT district, right? But at this stage, there was some small showings in the northern end, and while he was up there, he heard rumors of these copper showings about 80 Ks, 100 Ks to the north. And so went up to Ubaguma and identified, was shown, whatever you want to call it, these outcropping walls of copper, and became very excited. And this became very early stage exploration on grants. And the Adelaide syndicate got really interested in this as well, because they decided they didn't quite have enough of it. And so they started this slander operation, played out in the newspapers. You can go through Trove and find Grant's Norwest and Ubaguma Copper and all this sort of stuff. And they pretty much did this whole slander aspect about how he wasn't doing his job, didn't execute. They stank the company. And they blamed it all on Grants. And Grants even came back and threatened to kill all the people in the newspaper, which is fantastic reading. And essentially, a year later, the exact same people who sank the company bought it out of receivership and started Grant's Norwest. And the person they sent up, a guy named Wilson, which is one of the other prospects up there, was sent up there. Wilson's the exact same guy that said Grant had overpumped the discovery, and now he was the lead of Grant's Norwest, a new company, the exact same shareholders, but slightly larger shareholding, going up there to start mining 1906, 1907 to 1910. this area produced high grade copper from these big veins sticking out of the ground. So fantastic story, shows that junior exploration's been dodgy for over 100 years. So as we all sort of know, but again, you had these areas that were known about. They had produced a little bit, and so when Roy Woodall, so we fast forward then about 30, 40 years, 1958, Roy Woodall is on his way back from doing his master's in the U.S. He's right in the heart early of his career. He's just come back and he's about to deploy geochemistry and his exploration philosophies here in Australia for the first time. And one of the first tasks he gets told to go up to the Kimberley to check out these old workings. So it's a bit of a toss up for Roy. He sits there and goes, I want to do big project generation. I'm getting sent out to show these prospector workings, but he actually deploys exploration geochemistry for probably one of the first times in Western Australia, in Australian history. It's 1958, and it's all documented. Fantastic history. I'm probably digressing a bit, but 1956 to 1958, he does that exploration up there. They map out Grant's Find, fantastic mapping work, Wilson's and some of the historical workings. They go off and they find an area called Rough Triangle. They map this out, 1.8 kilometer long vein of just copper, just sitting on the surface in an area called Rough Triangle. It's pretty rough for a reason. And they do the first drill holes into Grants, and they get some copper. And then they moved over. I forget what it was now off the top of my head, but it wasn't long before they had another big discovery of uranium or something like that took their attention away. So that's 1958. They put some holes into Grants. They showed the mineralization continued. They put some early resources on it, and then they turned their attention elsewhere.
Okay.
So this area remains completely untouched from 1958 until we get up there in 2019.
When so Roy Woodall was up there. I'm just trying to understand. So he did his looking around. The copper's there. He gets distracted. Did defense come in and then it shut down for a while? Am I getting that right?
It's a pretty remote area, and so there wasn't a whole lot of exploration. There wasn't a whole lot of exploration up there. And then by the time you have the next big round of exploration, in fact, Pickens Mathers did the whole big. Took the entire Kimberley to try and promote this region and try and find things. The state actually allocated mineral rights to them for a very large tract of land to do stream sediment sampling and the rest. I think that was 1968, 1970s. And before they could really do anything, 1978, Commonwealth buys the stations, the Ubaguma and Bolton Station, gets converted to Commonwealth land. No more access. Access denied.
Okay. Access denied until you guys came along. The Chapmans did what they needed to do. Access is now allowed. You said, speaking of access, you said it's quite difficult to get to, but you said that you're pretty excited about this area. How difficult is it, and what are you guys doing at the moment? Because it sounds great, but how are Dreadnought going to create shareholder value in this Kimberley project?
Yep. So the vast majority of the areas we're talking about exploring, we talk about going undercover. These areas are flat. There's now established access into the area, into the project area. We have reopened a lot of the tracks that were used by Roy Woodall and himself back in the early days. And so we have fantastic access throughout the project area. Everywhere that we're looking at exploring in is on the Black Plains soil. It's in the low country. It's easy to get to, and we're not actually going up over any high country or anything like that. So very insensitive ground, very good access, easy access ground. So the only difficulty with access we refer to is during the seasonality of the Kimberley. And that is access into the YSTA at the moment goes across 2 mudflats. And so after the wet season, it takes a little bit longer for it to dry out to the rest of the Kimberley. So it's not an insurmountable access issue. It's an early stage exploration access issue. And like all Kimberley, you have a pretty short field season. So
sorry to interrupt you, what is that field season? Is that coming up now?
Yes. So field season generally, depending on the wet, starts from June, July, and it goes until about November. You really don't want to be there in December. It's pretty nasty.
But nasty is in hot, not nasty is in wet.
Yes, it gets hot, right? Well, it starts getting wet then as well. So
okay.
Yes, once it changes, once the weather changes, you can feel it, and it's not very nice.
Okay, Dean, I want to, because one of the things that I've learned about you is that you really you dive deep into I guess the history and the understanding of of the land and what you're looking at. I want to understand on a scale, how excited are you about this project, number one? And the second half of this is, if you're excited about it, what's the plans? Are you getting some drilling started? Because it's all, to me and to our audience, it's all about that shareholder value and increasing the I guess the opportunity, but also the outcome.
Absolutely. So what we see up there at the moment, we already have the Grants mineralization. We have Orion. So we made Orion discovery in 2021. This was the first discovery that we made testing targets undercover. And so if I take a step back into why we think it's Cloncurry, why we think it's Mount Isa. When we did this, we originally put our holes into Grants. We're hoping to see some gold with that copper. There wasn't any gold assays done in 1958 because gold wasn't really much of a thing. So no gold assays were done. We sampled it, mapped it in great detail, got a few bits of gold, not as much gold as we wanted. But by drilling that and doing that work, we got a lot more samples. We had ability to fingerprint, provide material to some of the academics that work over in Cloncurry and Mount Isa. And the signatures, the geochemistry, the mineralogical, everything continued to support this idea that this was a Cloncurry style system. And so when we started doing our geophysics-driven exploration, geophysics-driven because of the Black Plains soil, we didn't think we'd be able to get geochemistry data. And so Orion was this coincident grav, mag, EM conductor. We put holes into that, and we got intercepts. Discovery 2021, 16 meters at 2.2% copper, 6.6 grams of gold, over an ounce silver, and 0.4% cobalt. Like a fantastic high-grade polymetallic massive sulfide system. And importantly, most excitingly, it wasn't under 30 meters of Black Plains soil like you get in Cloncurry, Mount Isa. It was only under 1 to 5 meters, which meant that unlike exploring in the Isa, we could actually collect surface geochemical data to help guide our future exploration. And so for the past year and a half, after making that Orion discovery, we've been doing auger geochemistry up there and creating a geochemical map of this entire region on top of our detailed geophysics. And it's identified 13 to 14 Orion lookalikes.
Oh.
So Orion was a pure geophysical target. We had these ideas in our mind of what geophysical signatures these things would have. And we did the auger over a bunch of them, and the geochemistry said no. And so we went back to the drawing board with that auger data and went, all right, it's a lithostructural control. So these are the prospective areas. We threw the auger at them, and bingo, bango. Not only do we start generating some fantastic coherent geochemical anomalies, we also find 4 or 5 more gossinous outcrops associated with them. So we now have the Orion discovery, which beautiful high-grade massive sulfide under a little bit of cover. Now that we have the geochemical data set, we now have 13 to 14 lookalikes with similar geochemical signature and tenor, similar coincident geophysical anomalism, and 4 or 5 of them also have gossins sticking out of the ground. What more could you ask for? This is what dreams are made of in exploration. This is why an opportunity like this is so great. So what is that opportunity? That opportunity in our minds has always been an Avanco style opportunity. So Orion and Grants are interesting together.
Sorry, Dave. What style opportunity?
Yeah, Avanco. So Avanco was a company that our founder Paul Chapman was involved with over in Brazil. Got taken out by Oz Minerals for hundreds of millions of dollars because they had found a cluster of high-grade copper gold deposits over in the Carajás. Now, BHP now owns that asset, and it's still producing to this day. So what are we looking for? We're looking for a cluster of Orions. So we're trying to find Orion's friends. We find 1 or 2 more discoveries out there. All of a sudden, we have potential for this to be a plus 20 million ton copper resource camp. That starts to attract the majors who, by the way, almost every single major company has expressed interest in this project from day one.
Oh, wow.
This is one of these rare opportunities to have a greenfields copper discovery in an area that's underexplored. It ticks a lot of these boxes from the major companies. So a lot of interest here. We have to prove that scale is there. And we will be doing that this year when we finish the Mangaroon project. And that is extremely exciting for us.
Okay. When are you finishing the Mangaroon project to then start focusing on the Kimberley?
Well, we're wrapping up. We've already ordered all the consumables. We've shipped up the sea container to Derby. Everything's ready for us to go. We should be hopefully wrapping up this month.
So then you start. So again, talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Sometimes you have to. You're going to go up there, and what are you doing? Are you doing sampling? Are you doing drilling? I want to know how long is it going to take before you fully understand what this
Drill,
is?
baby, drill.
Listen, Dean.
Drill,
I'm
baby, drill.
impatient. What?
Drill, baby, drill. We are here to drill, baby, drill. We have spent from 2019 wrapping our head around this. The discovery in 2021. Okay. The only reason we didn't get back up there last year was because of our rare earth discovery at Mangaroon.
Yeah.
We've taken that time to build up that target portfolio. We have 13, 14 Orion lookalike targets. We're putting RC drill holes into each and every one of them.
Okay, so how long is that going to take? What are we looking at? I'm looking for, again, those milestones where the market goes, holy moly. Had to change them.
August, September. So we have all the targets. August, September, we get up there, we start drilling. We hit massive sulfide. That's pretty visual. We have the visuals almost instantaneously. And then the assays very quickly behind that. We're not doing rare earth assays, so we don't have the massive lead times that we do for the rare earths. It's standard assays, lots of installed capacity. So we should have quick turnarounds on the assays. So by the end of this year, we would have started drilling, tested all 13 targets, announced visuals if we have any visual discoveries, assays out, and we have, hopefully, if all comes up, a couple discoveries to support Orion and grants.
Do you think that this is mainly a potentially large copper deposit, or do you think, because you mentioned cobalt, you mentioned silver, you mentioned my favorite subject, gold, do you think it's predominantly going to be focused on the copper?
Copper gold feels like it's going to be the dominant things. In Mount Isa, Cloncurry, there's a lot of cobalt opportunity there as well. We have confirmed that's in cobaltite, so it is a recoverable cobalt mineral. So who knows what we're going to have? Going back, Orion originally was a nickel copper target because IGO and Buxton were chasing that down the road. We thought we had a nickel copper target. We drilled that and we got the copper gold. So we have copper gold and silver and cobalt now. That's most likely going to continue throughout the system, but we will see as we drill and test these targets.
I can't believe how fast it's going, because we've run out of time. I cannot believe it, because there was so much. This is why I want to talk just about the Kimberley today and do the deep dive, because I don't think people understand what it is you've potentially got your hands on. But ladies and gentlemen, obviously do your own research, but there's a lot of news flow coming out. I want you to focus and watch what's happening up there in the Kimberley, because of course, Roy Woodall knew what he was talking about. Dean's done his research. They're unlocking this area that hasn't had any modern technology, any exploration done it since, 1950s?
1958.
Wow. Stupid. All right, Dean, finish it up for us, wrap it up, and explain to our audience 3 reasons why you think that this Kimberley project is something they should be really sitting up and taking notice of.
It's a new copper province in Western Australia that has not been identified or explored before, that has all the attention of the majors. It has 13 targets that look identical to, and some even better than, the discovery that we made in 2021. And we are about to head up there and drill and make those discoveries. And if we do, that's the greatest value creation event in the industry. And we've got 13 targets to go up there and put holes into. We are not going to die wondering. We're going to find out very shortly.
And I think he's pretty excited about what he's doing. So ladies and gentlemen, there you are. The drill bit is about to start. The news flow will be coming. That is the deep dive into the Kimberley project of Dreadnought Resources. ASX code is DRE. Dean Tuck is their managing director, and we'll be back next month, see how they're going along. But for now, Dean, thanks so much for joining me on Making Money Matter.
Thank you, Kerry. Always a pleasure.